What if the very people who should respect you the most saw you only as free labor? At my cousin's wedding, my parents had it all figured out. I would serve drinks like hired staff, without pay, without choice. But they had no idea that I had overheard every detail, and instead of playing along, I chose something far more unforgettable. They expected me to stand behind the bar, invisible in my server's apron, while they celebrated as guests. What they got instead was a lesson in respect they'd never forget. My name is Rachel Whitmore, and at 34, I've mastered the art of crafting the perfect cocktail, but apparently, I've never mastered the art of saying no to my family. Every evening at the Velvet Rose, Portland's newest boutique cocktail lounge, I command respect. Patrons wait patiently for my creations. Fellow bartenders seek my advice, and the owner trusts me completely with inventory, scheduling, and designing seasonal menus. But step through my parents' front door, and suddenly I'm just the daughter with the useful hobby. The irony isn't lost on me. In the professional world, I'm sought after for my expertise. Last month, Portland Monthly featured me in their Rising Stars of the Cocktail Scene article. My signature lavender honey old-fashioned has become so popular that people make reservations specifically for nights when I'm behind the bar. Yet when my mother, Janet, introduces me at family gatherings, it's always the same. This is Rachel, our middle child. She tends bar downtown, such a fun job for a young person. Young person, as if 34 is still finding myself. As if managing a high-end establishment is equivalent to slinging beers at a college dive. My parents' Tudor-style house in Lake Oswego looks exactly as it has for the past 20 years. Immaculate lawn, perfectly trimmed hedges, the American dream wrapped in suburban respectability. Inside, every surface gleams with my mother's obsessive attention to appearances. Family photos line the mantel, strategically arranged to showcase our supposed harmony. There's Marcus, my older brother, in his law school graduation robes, centered and largest. There's Elaine, my younger sister, radiant in her wedding dress, surrounded by her 3 photogenic children. And there I am, off to the side in a smaller frame, holding a cocktail shaker at some forgotten family party, captured mid-pour. That photo says everything about my place in this family's hierarchy. Marcus, at 37, is the golden child who followed the prescribed path law degree from Georgetown, junior partner at a prestigious firm, house in the West Hills with his architect wife. When he visits, Mom practically glows, hanging on his every word about depositions and client dinners. Elaine, 31, chose the other acceptable route, married her college sweetheart right after graduation, produced 3 grandchildren in quick succession, and dedicates herself to PTA meetings and organic meal planning. She's never worked a day in her life outside the home, which my parents consider the ultimate feminine achievement. Then there's me, the one who didn't marry straight out of college, didn't pursue a respectable profession, didn't provide grandchildren. Instead, I worked my way up from barback to bar manager, earned my sommelier certification, and built a reputation in Portland's competitive hospitality scene, none of which seems to register as real accomplishments in the Whitmore family ledger. Rachel's so good at mixing drinks. My father, Paul, loves to say, usually while volunteering my services, she won't mind making everyone cocktails at Christmas. Will you, sweetheart? And I never said no. Not when they volunteered me to work Marcus's engagement party. Not when I spent Elaine's entire baby shower behind a makeshift bar in the backyard. Not when I missed most of Dad's retirement dinner because I was in the kitchen, muddling mint and slicing garnishes while the hired caterers served the actual meal. Each time, I told myself it was about being helpful, being the good daughter, contributing in my own way. But Tasha, my best friend since high school, sees it differently. "Girl, they treat you like the help," she said last week over coffee. "When was the last time you actually sat down and enjoyed a family event?" I couldn't remember. The truth is, I've been the family's unofficial bartender for so long that I've forgotten what it feels like to be just a guest, just a daughter, just Rachel. While Marcus regales everyone with his courtroom victories and Elaine passes around her children like trophies, I'm tucked behind whatever surface has been designated as the bar, watching my family's life unfold from the margins. But Caroline's wedding was supposed to be different. My cousin Caroline, the one who'd actually treated me like a person, who'd come to the Velvet Rose just to see me work, who'd called my cocktails artistic. Her wedding was in a week, and for once, I'd bought a dress not for its practicality or whether it would hide stains, but for how it made me feel elegant, visible, worthy of being seen. Caroline's wedding invitation had arrived 3 months ago, embossed gold lettering on cream cardstock that probably cost more than my monthly coffee budget. The Riverside Country Club, 6:30 in the evening, black tie optional. I'd run my fingers over the words Rachel Whitmore and guest, feeling something I hadn't experienced at a family event in years' anticipation. Caroline was different from the rest of the family, 5 years younger than me. She'd grown up watching how I was treated but never participated in the casual dismissiveness. When she turned 21, she'd insisted on celebrating at the Velvet Rose, bringing her entire friend group to watch me work. My cousin's an artist, she'd told them, and meant it. She'd even asked me to teach her how to make a proper martini, taking notes on her phone like I was someone worth learning from. Her wedding to David was being touted as the event of the year in our extended family. My Aunt Patricia, Caroline's mother, had been planning it with military precision, dropping numbers that made my eyes water. 25,000 just for flowers, Mom had whispered to me last month, equal parts scandalized and impressed. The venue alone cost more than I made in 6 months. For once, I'd decided to match the occasion. The dress I'd found at a boutique in the Pearl District was a Revelation deep emerald silk that moved like water, with a subtle beaded neckline that caught the light. It cost $800, more than I'd ever spent on a single piece of clothing. But when I tried it on, I saw someone else in the mirror. Not the reliable bartender, not the helpful daughter, but a woman who belonged at elegant events as a participant, not staff. I'd even convinced Evan to come with me. We'd been dating for 8 months, and while he'd heard plenty about my family, he'd only met them briefly at neutral locations, coffee shops, restaurants where I couldn't be recruited to work. The wedding seemed like the perfect opportunity to introduce him properly, to show my family that I had a life beyond serving their drinks. "You're excited about this," Evan had observed last week, watching me try on jewelry to match the dress. "I don't think I've ever seen you excited about a family thing." He was right. For years, family events had meant work arriving early to set up, staying late to clean, missing conversations because someone needed a refill. But this time would be different. The country club had its own staff, its own bars, its own everything. I could actually sit at a table, eat the 5-course meal, dance at the reception. I could be present, not just useful. The week before the wedding, signs started appearing. Subtle at first. Marcus called while I was at work, his voice casual over the sound of his car's Bluetooth. "Hey, Rach, you bringing your bartender kit to Caroline's thing?" "Why would I bring my kit to a wedding?" I'd asked, wiping down the bar after the lunch rush. He laughed. "Come on, you know how these venue bartenders are. They never make drinks right. Caroline's counting on you to show them how it's done. The Riverside Country Club has professional staff. Marcus. They've been doing this for 50 years. Still," he said, and I could hear his shrug through the phone. "Better polish that shaker. You know how the family loves your mojitos." I'd dismissed it as Marcus being Marcus, always assuming I'd jump into service mode. Elaine had been more subtle during Sunday brunch at our parents' house. "What are you wearing to the wedding?" she'd asked, feeding mashed peas to her youngest. "I bought a new dress, actually. This gorgeous green silk." Green. She'd wrinkled her nose. "Isn't that a little flashy for someone who'll be, helping out?" "I'm not helping out. I'm a guest." She'd exchanged a look with Mom that I couldn't quite read. Oh, okay. That should have been my warning. That look, the pause, the way Mom quickly changed the subject to Elaine's eldest's soccer season. But I was so caught up in the fantasy of finally being just a guest that I'd ignored the signs. Even when Dad mentioned, offhandedly, that the country club's drink packages were highway robbery and how nice it was to have our own expert in the family. I'd chosen to believe he meant it as a compliment to my profession, not a hint about expectations. The Wednesday before the wedding, I stood in my apartment, the dress hanging on my closet door, shoes paired neatly beneath it. Evan was coming over later to see the full ensemble. For once, I would walk into a family event and simply exist. Just be Rachel, not Rachel who makes the drinks. I had no idea that in less than 24 hours, I'd overhear the conversation that would shatter that illusion completely. Thursday evening arrived with the kind of spring rain Portland is famous for, a steady drizzle that turned the streets into mirrors. I'd left work early, planning to stop by my parents' house for dinner before heading home. Mom had insisted, "Just family, nothing fancy. We need to coordinate for Saturday." I should have known that coordinate was code for something else entirely. I'd parked down the street because Marcus's BMW was in the driveway alongside Elaine's minivan. The rain had picked up, and I'd forgotten my umbrella. So I jogged to the side entrance through the kitchen, the one we'd used as kids when we didn't want to track mud through the front hall. The door was unlocked, as always, and I slipped inside quietly, not wanting to drip on Mom's pristine floors. That's when I heard them. They were all in the kitchen, Mom, Marcus, and Elaine, their voices carrying clearly as I stood in the mudroom, hidden by the partial wall that separated it from the main kitchen. I was about to announce myself when Marcus's words stopped me cold. "So Rachel's definitely running the bar during the reception." "Right. We've got that covered." My body went rigid. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering. "Of course," Mom replied, and I could hear her moving dishes around, probably setting the table. Patricia was so relieved when I told her. The country club wanted $1,500 extra for full bar service through the reception. Highway robbery. $1,500. Elaine whistled. "Well, thank God for Rachel then. She's a professional anyway. It's basically free labor." Free labor. The words hit like ice water down my spine. Marcus laughed, that confident boom that usually preceded his courtroom stories. "Right. And she's better than whatever college kids they'd hire anyway. Win-win." I told Patricia we'd have Rachel set up at the sidebar, the one near the French doors. Mom continued. "That way she's accessible but not in the wedding photos. We can't have her in that uniform in the formal pictures." "What uniform?" Elaine asked. "Oh, I picked up a black server's outfit for her. Same as the country club staff wears. That way she'll blend in, look professional." "It's in the hall closet." My legs nearly gave out. They'd bought me a uniform. A fucking uniform. "Smart," Marcus said. "Though honestly, she won't have time for photos anyway. You know how Uncle Ted drinks. And Patricia's college friends, they'll keep her slammed all night." "She won't mind," Mom said with absolute certainty. "Rachel never says no. Besides, what else would she do? Sit there with that boyfriend of hers while everyone asks what he does. At least this way she's useful." "Is the boyfriend still coming?" Elaine asked, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. "Seems weird to bring a date if you're working." "I told Patricia to adjust the seating," Mom replied. "Removed the +1. No point in wasting a plate." The room spun. They'd removed Evan from the guest list, without asking me, without even telling me. "She'll probably be relieved," Marcus added. "You know how Rachel gets at these things. More comfortable behind the bar than mingling." "It's her safe space or whatever." "Exactly," Mom agreed. "And between you and me, Patricia was worried about the cost of an open bar all night. This solves everything. Rachel can control portions, cut people off if needed. She's good at that." "Should someone tell her to bring her kit?" Elaine asked. "Her shakers and stuff." "I already put it in the trunk of Paul's car," Mom said. "I went by her apartment yesterday when she was at work. Still have the spare key. Grabbed her professional kit, the one she uses for catering. She'll have everything she needs." They'd been in my apartment, taken my things. The violation of it made my skin crawl. "Perfect," Marcus said. "Problem solved. Though, honestly, she should be thanking us. Caroline's wedding guests are exactly the type who'd tip well. She could make a few hundred easy. Oh, she won't take tips, Mom said firmly. This is family. I made that clear to Patricia. Rachel does this out of love. Out of love. I pressed my hand to my mouth, fighting the urge to either scream or vomit. Still, Elaine laughed. At least she'll be in her element. Remember Marcus's law firm party? She looked so uncomfortable trying to make conversation with the partners' wives. This is better. She can hide behind the bar. Do her thing. She's not hiding, Mom said defensively, though not of me of her decision. She's contributing, using her skills. It's what family does. Right, Marcus agreed. Besides, someone has to do it, and she's literally a professional bartender. It would be weird if she didn't. The casual cruelty of their logic was breathtaking. In their minds, they'd already transformed me from guest to staff, from family to servant, and they'd done it so naturally, so matter-of-factly, that it was clear this was how they'd always seen me. I backed out slowly, silently, the way I'd come in. The rain was coming down harder now, but I barely felt it as I walked to my car. I sat there in the driver's seat, soaked and shaking, watching the warm light from my parents' kitchen window. They were probably sitting down to dinner now, satisfied with their plan, never imagining I knew. The dress, my beautiful $800 dress, hung in my closet like a mockery. The shoes I'd spent an hour choosing, the jewelry I'd borrowed from Tasha, all for a wedding where I was never meant to be a guest at all. I drove home in silence, my phone buzzing with texts from Evan asking about dinner, from Mom wondering where I was, from Caroline sending excited emojis about her big day. I ignored them all, because in that moment, sitting in my apartment with my professional bartending kit missing from its usual spot, I knew exactly what I was going to do. They wanted to treat me like hired help. Fine. But they were about to learn that even help has limits, and I was done serving. The memories came flooding back that night, each one a small cut that had never quite healed. I sat in my living room with a glass of wine, one I'd poured myself, and let them wash over me like a tide I'd been holding back for years. Marcus's law school graduation party, 12 years ago. I'd been 22, fresh out of college myself, working my first real bartending job at a sports bar downtown. Mom had called me 2 days before the celebration, her voice bright with an idea that had just occurred to her. Sweetheart, you know how to make cocktails now, don't you? Wouldn't it be fun if you made drinks at Marcus's party? You could show everyone your new skills. Fun. That's what she'd called it. I'd spent 8 hours setting up a bar in the backyard, running to 3 different liquor stores for supplies, mixing drinks for 50 of Marcus's classmates and my parents' friends. I'd worn black pants and a white shirt to look professional. Mom had insisted while everyone else wore summer dresses and linen suits. The moment that stuck with me most from that day, Marcus's girlfriend asking him who I was. Oh, that's my sister, he'd said, barely glancing my way. She's handling the drinks. Not my sister Rachel. Not my sister who just graduated with honors. Just my sister who's handling the drinks. Then there was Elaine's first baby shower, 7 years ago. I'd been building my reputation at the Velvet Rose, had just been promoted to lead bartender. But at the shower, I stood behind a folding table on the patio, making pink punch and mimosas for 40 women I barely knew. I'd wanted to sit with Elaine, to play the stupid games, to be part of the circle of women celebrating my sister's pregnancy. Instead, I'd watched from across the yard as they played Guess the Baby Food and laughed at stories I couldn't hear. Rachel's so talented, I'd heard one guest say to my mother. How wonderful that she can help like this. Oh yes, Mom had replied, beaming. She never complains. Such a servant's heart. A servant's heart. As if my service was a virtue instead of an expectation. Dad's retirement party 3 years ago was perhaps the worst. He'd worked 35 years at his accounting firm, and Mom had planned an elaborate dinner at our house. 60 guests, catered food, and me stationed in the kitchen making old fashions and martinis while everyone else toasted my father in the dining room. I'd missed his speech, missed the video my siblings had put together, though no one had asked me to contribute to it, missed the moment when his partners presented him with a gold watch, all because someone needed a whiskey sour, and then another, and another. When I'd finally emerged from the kitchen at the end of the night, exhausted and reeking of lime juice, Dad had patted my shoulder. "Thanks for pitching in, kiddo. Don't know what we'd do without you." Pitch in, as if I'd volunteered, as if I'd had a choice. Even the smaller gatherings followed the same pattern. Sunday dinners where I'd mix aperitifs while everyone else sat in the living room. Holiday parties where my gift to the family was bartending services. Backyard barbecues where Marcus and Elaine lounged by the pool while I stood at the makeshift bar, sweating in the sun, watching my family's life happen at a distance. "You're so lucky," Elaine had once said, watching me muddle mint for mojitos at our cousin's engagement party. "You actually know how to do something useful." Useful. That word followed me everywhere. Never talented, never skilled, never professional. Just useful. Like a good blender or a sharp knife, something you reached for when you needed it, then put away without a second thought. The pattern was so established that relatives had started making requests in advance. "Rachel will be there." Right. Aunt Patricia would ask Mom when planning events. For the drinks. Not, "Will Rachel be there?" As in, "Will my niece attend?" But, "Will Rachel be there for the drinks?" As if I came with a function attached. I'd tried to break free once, 5 years ago at Thanksgiving. I'd announced I was bringing a complicated side dish instead of bartending, wanting to sit at the table like everyone else for once. The confusion on my family's faces would have been funny if it hadn't hurt so much. "But who'll make the cocktails?" Mom had asked, genuinely puzzled. "People can pour their own wine," I'd suggested. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Marcus had laughed. "Come on, Rach. It's not Thanksgiving without your apple cider sangria. Don't be difficult." Difficult. That's what I was being by wanting to sit down at my own family's Thanksgiving dinner. So I'd caved, as always. Made the sangria, mixed the cocktails, ate my turkey standing up in the kitchen between drink orders while everyone else lingered over pie and coffee. Tasha had been watching this pattern for years, growing increasingly frustrated on my behalf. "They've trained you," she'd said after last Christmas, when I'd spent the entire day behind my parents' wet bar. "Like a circus animal, they snap their fingers, and you perform." "It's not that bad," I'd protested, but even I hadn't believed it. "When was the last time you were in a family photo at a holiday?" she'd challenged. "A real one, not one someone snapped while you were working." I couldn't remember. The truth was devastating in its simplicity. My family had assigned me a role, and I'd accepted it. For over a decade, I'd been the unpaid help at every gathering, the invisible hand that kept their drinks full and their parties running. They'd never asked if I minded because it had never occurred to them that I might. And now, Caroline's wedding, the one event I'd thought would be different, was just another performance I was expected to give. Except this time, they'd gone so far as to buy me a costume and remove my boyfriend from the guest list. As I sat in my apartment that night, something crystallized in my chest, not anger exactly, but something harder and more purposeful. Resolution, maybe, or liberation. They wanted a bartender at Caroline's wedding. They'd get one, just not the way they expected. Friday morning, I called in sick to work the first time in 2 years. My manager was concerned, offering to cover my shift himself, but I assured him I'd be back Monday. I had planning to do, and it required my full attention. First, I called Tommy Nguyen, a friend from culinary school who now ran a high-end catering company. We'd helped each other out of tight spots before I'd bartended his events when he was short-staffed. He'd provided last-minute appetizers for my private cocktail classes. "I need a favor," I said when he answered. "A big one." "Anything. Rach." "What's up?" "I need 2 of your best bartenders for tomorrow night. The Riverside Country Club, 6:30 to midnight, full professional setup." "Tomorrow, that's tight. What's the event?" "My cousin's wedding, 200 guests, full open bar service." There was a pause. "Aren't you bartending it?" "No, I said firmly. I'm attending as a guest. But here's the thing, my family doesn't know about the bartenders yet. They will tomorrow. Tommy whistled low. Family drama. Something like that. Can you do it? For you? Of course. But Riverside Country Club, full service. Last minute it's going to cost probably $2,000. Maybe more with the short notice. Done. I'll transfer you the money today. That money was supposed to go to Marcus. He'd asked to borrow $3,000 for a down payment on a boat he wanted, and I'd agreed last month, planning to give him the check at the wedding. Well, plans change. After hanging up with Tommy, I texted Marcus, "Hey, about that loan ran into some unexpected expenses. Can't swing it right now?" "Sorry." His response was immediate and furious. "Are you kidding me? We already put the deposit down." I didn't reply. Let him figure it out. Maybe Elaine could help, since she never seemed to work but always had money for her yoga retreats and organic groceries. Next, I drove to the bank and withdrew the cash for Tommy, then stopped at a florist. "I need a corsage," I told the woman behind the counter. "Something elegant. Price doesn't matter." She showed me a stunning orchid piece with baby's breath and pearl accents. "This is our premium mother of the bride style." "Perfect. But it's for me." She raised an eyebrow but wrapped it carefully. If I was going to be a guest, I was going to look like an important one. That afternoon, Evan came by as planned. I'd texted him the basics my family expected me to bartend the wedding. I'd just found out. I was refusing. He'd arrived with Thai takeout and a bottle of wine, ready to strategize. "So, what's the plan?" he asked, unpacking pad Thai. "Are you going to confront them?" "No. Confrontation would just lead to arguments, guilt trips, manipulation. They'd make me the villain for ruining Caroline's special day." I took a sip of wine. "Instead, I'm going to give them exactly what they want: professional bar service, just not from me. And you're showing up as a guest, in my $800 dress and designer shoes, sitting at a table they removed you from without telling me." Evan's face darkened. "They removed me from the guest list. Apparently, there's no point in wasting a plate on my +1 if I'm working." "That's fucked up, Rachel. That's my family." We spent the evening rehearsing possible scenarios. What if they confronted me at the entrance? What if they tried to guilt me in front of everyone? What if they made a scene? "The key," I said, "is to remain calm, polite, confused, even. Oh, you needed a bartender. I wish you'd asked. I could have recommended someone. Oh, wait, I see you already have professionals." "How wonderful." Evan laughed. "You're scary when you're strategic." Saturday morning, I woke at 9, took a long bath, and began preparing with the kind of ritualistic care usually reserved for battle. Hair appointment at noon, an elegant updo that cost $150, makeup at 3 professional application that made me look like I belonged in a magazine. I put on the dress slowly, savoring the weight of the silk, the way it moved with my body. The shoes' 4-inch heels I'd never be able to work in made me stand differently, taller, more commanding. The corsage went on my wrist like armor. At 5:45, I called Tommy. "Your team ready?" "They're already at the venue, setting up at the sidebar. My best guys, Jake and Simon. They've worked celebrity weddings. They'll be perfect." "Tommy, I owe you." "You owe me nothing, but I want to hear this story later." I took a final look in the mirror. I didn't recognize myself, and that was exactly the point. The woman staring back wasn't the family bartender, the useful daughter, the one who never said no. She was someone who belonged at cocktail parties and gallery openings, someone whose presence was valued, not just her service. My phone had been buzzing all day with texts from Mom. "Where are you?" "Your kid is in Dad's car. We need you here by 5 to set up." "Rachel, answer your phone." I'd ignored them all, let them sweat. At 6:15, I got in my car, careful not to wrinkle the dress. The drive to the country club took 20 minutes. I used every one of them to remind myself that I deserved to be seen, to be valued, to be more than just the help. As I pulled into the country club's parking lot, I saw Dad's car near the service entrance. My bartending kit probably still in the trunk. Mom's sedan was parked in the main lot, right up front where the important guests parked. I found a spot between a Mercedes and a Tesla, checked my lipstick one last time, and stepped out of the car. It was time for the family bartender to make her entrance as anything but. The Riverside Country Club was magnificent in the evening light, its colonial facade wrapped in tiny white lights that made the whole building glow like something out of a fairy tale. I walked through the main entrance, my heels clicking on marble floors, past the coat check where other guests were arriving in their finest. No one looked at me like hired help. Why would they? I looked like I belonged. The cocktail hour was being held in the garden room, its French doors thrown open to the terrace. I could hear the murmur of conversation, the clink of glasses, and underneath it all, the efficient sounds of a bar being worked by professionals. Tommy's guys were already in action. I took a glass of champagne from a passing server, an actual server, hired for the event, and made my way toward the garden room. That's when I saw them Mom, Dad, and Marcus huddled near the entrance, their faces twisted with barely controlled panic. "She's not answering her phone," Mom was hissing. "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. "Her car's not in the lot," Dad added, sweat beading on his forehead. I checked twice. Marcus looked ready to punch something. "This is insane. She knew about this. She had to know." That's when Mom spotted me. For a moment, her face flooded with relief. Then confusion took over as she registered what she was seeing me. In formal attire, holding champagne, a corsage on my wrist like a proper wedding guest. "Rachel!" She rushed over, her voice pitched between relief and rage. "Thank God you're here. Where have you been?" "You need to change right now." "The bar." "Mom," I said calmly, taking a sip of champagne. "You look lovely. Is that a new dress?" "What, Rachel? There's no time for—" She grabbed my wrist, the one without the corsage. "Your uniform is in the coat room. You need to— uniform." I pulled my hand away gently, my face a mask of confusion. "I'm sorry. What uniform?" Marcus had joined us now, his face red. "Cut the crap. Rachel, the bar needs to be manned. The ceremony's about to start." "Oh, the bar." I looked over his shoulder to where Jake and Simon were efficiently serving drinks, their movements professional and smooth. "It looks like it's being handled beautifully. Did Caroline hire them? They're excellent." "We didn't," Dad started, then stopped, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Those aren't our bartenders," Mom said, her voice rising. "Rachel, stop playing games. You're the bartender." I let my eyes go wide with surprise. "I'm sorry. What, Mom?" "I'm a guest. Look, I even have a corsage." I held up my wrist, the orchids catching the light. "You're supposed to be working," Marcus spat. "We told Caroline." "You told Caroline what exactly?" I asked, my voice still pleasant but with an edge creeping in. "That I'd work her wedding without asking me, without even telling me. You always do the drinks." Elaine had appeared, holding her youngest on her hip, looking harried. "It's what you do." "At home, sometimes. When I offer," I corrected. "This is Caroline's wedding, at a venue with professional staff. Why would I be working?" The four of them stared at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. Behind them, I could see other guests beginning to notice our tense little group. "But we planned," Mom started. "You planned," I interrupted, still keeping my voice level. "I wasn't part of any planning. I wasn't asked, consulted, or even informed. I bought this dress to wear as a guest. I scheduled a +1, though I see Evan's place card has mysteriously vanished from the seating chart." "You can't do this," Marcus said through gritted teeth. "Caroline is expecting—" "Caroline," I said, spotting my cousin across the room in her stunning wedding dress, "is expecting me to celebrate with her, which is what I intend to do." As if on cue, Caroline noticed our group and floated over, radiant despite the tension she must have sensed. "Rachel." "Oh my God, you look absolutely gorgeous. That dress—" "Thank you," I said, embracing her carefully to avoid messing up her veil. "You're absolutely glowing. The happiest bride I've ever seen." "Aunt Janet said you were handling the bar, but I see we have bartenders already." Caroline looked confused but not upset. "Did you arrange them? They're fantastic. One of them just made David's father the best Manhattan he's ever had." "Professional service for a professional event," I said smoothly. "You deserve the best on your special day." Mom tried one more time, pulling out the black server's uniform from a bag I hadn't noticed she was carrying. "Rachel, please, just put this on. People are expecting people," I said, looking directly at her, "are expecting to celebrate Caroline and David, and that's what we should all be doing." I turned to Caroline. "I think they're calling for the wedding party to line up." Caroline nodded, still looking confused but choosing not to pursue it. "Right. Yes, Rachel. You're at table 7. I made sure you had a good spot, view of everything. You won't be stuck behind anyone during the toasts." She glided away, and I was left facing my family's stunned faces. $2,000, Mom whispered. "The bartenders will cost at least $2,000. Then it's fortunate you saved $1,500 by not paying for the venue's bar service," I replied. "The extra $500 can be my wedding gift to Caroline. Now, if you'll excuse me, I see some relatives I'd like to catch up with." I walked away, leaving them standing there with the server's uniform hanging limply from Mom's hands. Behind us, Jake was making what looked like a perfect French 75, his movements precise and professional. The ceremony was about to begin, and for the first time in over a decade, I was going to watch it from a seat, not from behind a bar. The ceremony was beautiful. I sat in the 4th row on the bride's side, tissues in hand, watching Caroline exchange vows with David beneath an arch of white roses and baby's breath. For the first time at a family wedding, I could actually see the bride's face when she said, "I do," could hear the tremor in David's voice when he promised to love her forever, could watch the flower girl stumble adorably over her own feet. Around me, relatives who hadn't seen me sitting at an event in years kept doing double takes. Aunt Patricia leaned over during the recessional to whisper, "Rachel, you look stunning. I almost didn't recognize you." The cocktail hour resumed after the ceremony, and that's when the whispers really started. I actually mingled with cousins I hadn't had a real conversation with in years. They'd only ever seen me in motion, hands full of bottles and shakers. Now I stood with them, champagne in hand, discussing Caroline's choice of flowers, the perfect weather, anything but the elephant in the room. "Rachel's just sitting there," I heard Great Aunt Ruth stage whisper to her daughter. "Like a regular guest." "Well, she is a guest, Mom," her daughter replied, though she too kept glancing at me with curiosity. At dinner, I found my seat at table 7 a good table, as Caroline had promised, filled with her college friends and younger cousins. The place card next to mine, which should have had Evan's name, had been hastily removed, leaving an empty chair that felt like a statement. "You're Rachel, right?" The woman across from me asked. "Caroline's cousin. She talks about you all the time. Says you manage that fancy cocktail place downtown." "The Velvet Rose, yes," I replied, grateful for normal conversation. That must be so interesting. The creativity involved in designing cocktail menus, the business side of things. Our conversation was interrupted by Marcus appearing at my shoulder. "Rachel, a word." "I'm in the middle of dinner, Marcus." "Now," I excused myself and followed him to a corner near the windows, where Mom and Dad were waiting. Elaine was notably absent, probably managing her children. "You've made your point," Dad said quietly. "Very clever, hiring your own bartenders. But people are noticing, asking questions." "What people?" I asked. "And what questions?" "They want to know why you're not helping," Mom said, her voice thick with embarrassment. "It looks strange, you sitting there while strangers serve drinks. It looks strange that I'm attending my cousin's wedding as a guest." "You know what she means?" Marcus snapped. "Everyone knows you're the family bartender." "No," I said firmly. I'm the family member who happens to be a professional bar manager. There's a difference. One is a person, the other is a function. Don't be so dramatic, Mom said. This is about family. Exactly. I interrupted. This is about family. About being treated like family. Tell me, when was the last time any of you asked me about my life at one of these events? About my work beyond how it could serve you? About my relationship, my goals, my struggles? Silence. That's what I thought. I turned to go, then paused. Oh, and Marcus. That $3,000 you needed for the boat. Consider the bartenders your loan. You can pay me back in installments. His face went purple. You said you couldn't. I said I had unexpected expenses. This was one of them. Back at my table, the wedding party was being announced. I watched Caroline and David's first dance. Watched Marcus have to escort his wife to the floor for the wedding party dance while still fuming. Watched my parents forced to make small talk at their table while obviously distressed. Throughout dinner, relatives kept approaching me with barely veiled curiosity. Taking a break tonight, Rachel. Uncle Ted asked, his words slightly slurred from the cocktails Jake had been expertly providing. Just enjoying the celebration. Uncle Ted. But who's making the drinks? Professional bartenders. Aren't they wonderful? He wandered away, confused. The pattern continued. Cousins who'd never bothered to talk to me beyond drink orders suddenly found me fascinating. So, what do you do for fun? Rachel. Are you seeing anyone? That's such a beautiful dress. As if I'd just materialized as a full person instead of a service function. During the toasts, when Marcus stood to give his best man speech weight. Marcus was best man. I'd been so relegated to the background. I hadn't even known he kept shooting glances at me. His speech was stilted, distracted. He mentioned family loyalty 3 times, each with a pointed look in my direction. But the real moment came when Aunt Patricia stood to give the mother of the bride toast. She thanked everyone who'd made the day special, the venue, the florist, the photographer, and special thanks to whoever arranged for these absolutely wonderful bartenders. The service has been impeccable. She raised her glass toward Jake and Simon, who nodded professionally. Then Patricia's eyes found me, confusion clear on her face. Though I must admit, I thought Rachel would be... Well, anyway, these gentlemen are doing a marvelous job. A ripple went through the room. The relatives who knew exchanged glances. Those who didn't looked puzzled. Caroline, from the head table, was looking between me and the bar with growing understanding. That's when Mom stood abruptly from her table, fumbling with her own glass. I'd also like to make a toast, she announced, though she wasn't on the program. The room quieted. Family, she began, her voice tight, is about supporting each other, about knowing your role and fulfilling it with grace. She was looking directly at me now, her eyes pleading and furious simultaneously. Sometimes, she continued, family members forget their responsibilities, but we forgive them because that's what family does. The room was uncomfortably silent. This wasn't a toast, it was a public scolding, and everyone could feel it. I stood slowly, my own glass in hand. To Caroline and David, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room. May your marriage be built on mutual respect, equal partnership, and the understanding that love means valuing someone for who they are, not just what they can do for you. The room burst into applause, though I could see the confusion on many faces. Caroline was beaming at me, tears in her eyes, mouthing, "Thank you." I sat down, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. At the bar, Jake was making another perfect cocktail, earning appreciative sounds from the guests he served. For the first time in years, I was just Rachel at a family wedding, and despite the anger radiating from my parents' table, despite Marcus's furious texts lighting up my silenced phone, despite the whispers and stares, I felt something I hadn't experienced at a family event in over a decade. I felt free. The reception was in full swing when I decided to make my final move. The band had started playing. Couples were moving onto the dance floor, and Jake and Simon continued their flawless service at the bar. I waited until the perfect moment when the photographer was gathering the family for formal pictures. "All immediate family, please," the photographer called out. "Parents, siblings, grandparents." My family clustered together near the head table, still shooting me angry glances. I stood and walked over, my dress catching the light with each step. The photographer smiled at me. "And you are?" "The bride's cousin, Rachel Whitmore." "Perfect right here in the front. Please." But Mom stepped forward. "Actually, Rachel was just going to stand right here." I finished smoothly, taking my place next to Caroline. "This is where family stands, isn't it?" Caroline grabbed my hand, squeezing it tight. "Absolutely. Rachel stays right next to me." The photos were taken me visible, present, documented as a guest and family member for the first time in years. No black uniform, no position behind a bar, no convenient excuse for why I wasn't in the frame. As the evening progressed, something remarkable happened. Caroline pulled me aside during a break in the dancing. "I need to apologize," she said, her eyes bright with tears and champagne. "I had no idea. Mom told me you'd offered to bartend, that it was your wedding gift to us. She said you insisted that you'd be more comfortable there." "It's not your fault," I assured her. "But it is. I should have asked you directly. I should have known better." She hugged me tightly. "Thank you for the professional bartenders. They're incredible. And thank you for standing up for yourself. It's about time someone in this family did." As the night wound toward its end, I found myself actually enjoying a family wedding for the first time in memory. I danced with cousins, shared dessert with table mates, and even caught the bouquet, though Elaine tried to elbow me out of the way. The pivotal moment came during the last dance. The band leader announced, "Before we end this beautiful evening, the bride has a special request." Caroline took the microphone, slightly tipsy but radiant. "I want to dedicate this last dance to my cousin Rachel. For years, she served our family literally at every event, every celebration, every gathering. She's mixed our drinks, sure, but more than that, she's mixed her talent, her time, and her energy into making our celebrations special, usually at the cost of her own enjoyment." The room had gone quiet. My parents were frozen at their table. "Tonight," Caroline continued, "Rachel chose to be present as herself, not as our unpaid staff, and I want to publicly thank her for that lesson in self-worth and boundaries. Rachel, you're not just skilled at what you do, you're valuable for who you are. This family needs to remember that." She raised her champagne glass, perfectly made by Jake, toward me. "To Rachel, for teaching us that no is a complete sentence, and that family means treating each other as equals, not as servants. I love you, cousin." The applause was thunderous. I stood there, tears streaming down my face, as relatives who'd never seen me as more than a drink dispenser suddenly seemed to see me clearly for the first time. Marcus and my parents left during that final dance, unable to watch their carefully constructed narrative collapse. Elaine stayed, but avoided my eyes. But others, aunts, uncles, cousins I'd barely spoken to in years, approached me with genuine warmth. "I always wondered why you were always working," one cousin admitted. "I thought you wanted to." "We should have said something," another added. "It wasn't right." As the evening ended, I walked out of the Riverside Country Club hand in hand with an imaginary Evan the date I should have been able to bring, but I didn't feel alone. For the first time in over a decade, I felt like I belonged at my own family's celebration, not as the help, but as myself. Jake and Simon were packing up their bar setup when I stopped to thank them and hand each an extra 100 in tips. "This was the most interesting wedding we've worked," Jake said with a grin. "The family dynamics were better than a soap opera." "You have no idea," I laughed. As I drove home in the early morning hours, my phone had dozens of messages, some from relatives expressing surprise and support, many from Marcus and my parents, ranging from furious to guilt-tripping to demanding. I deleted them all without reading. There was only one message I saved, a text from Caroline. "You're my hero. Also, David's family wants to hire you to design cocktails for their anniversary party. I told them you're very expensive and very worth it." I pulled into my apartment complex at 1:45 a.m., my feet aching from dancing in heels, my face sore from smiling real smiles, not the tight professional one I wore while serving. The $800 dress had been worth every penny, not because of how it looked, but because of what it represented my worth beyond my usefulness. The next morning, I had coffee with Tasha and told her everything. "So, what happens now?" she asked. "With your family? They'll either learn to see me as a person, not a function, or they won't," I said. "But either way, I'm done being the family bartender. If they want professional service, they can hire it. If they want Rachel, they get me as a guest, a daughter, a sister, or they don't get me at all." It's been 3 months since Caroline's wedding. Marcus still hasn't spoken to me, though he did eventually pay back the $2,000 for the bartenders. Mom and Dad have tentatively reached out, testing whether I'll fold for Thanksgiving. I won't. Elaine asked if I could just make a few drinks for her son's birthday. I sent her Tommy's catering contact, but Caroline and I have grown closer. She stands up for me now at family events, reminding everyone that I'm a guest, not staff. Some relatives get it, others don't. That's their problem, not mine. The Velvet Rose is thriving. I've been promoted to general manager. Evan and I are planning a trip to France to study cocktail trends. My life is full and rich and mine, and at family events I sit at tables. I eat the food while it's hot. I'm in the photos. I dance when I want to dance. I leave when I want to leave. I'm not the family bartender anymore. I'm just Rachel, and that's more than enough. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever had to stand up to family expectations? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments.